Over 1 million matric learners are preparing for the examinations, which begin on Thursday. For more on this, I'm joined by our reporter, Mahlako Komane. Very good afternoon to you, Mahlako. Do we have a sense of the readiness of government and students to write the exams?
Yes, good afternoon indeed, Nzinga. What we definitely do know is that you'll remember that last week Umalusi had said that it was all systems go, and that they felt that the systems were ready to conduct the 2020 National Senior Certificate. But also, you know, when you go on the ground and you speak to some learners, expressing that they're not too confident about writing this exam, considering, you know, the challenges that the class of 2020 has had to face. Some sitting at home since the initial lockdown in March up until I think the second week of June, with various provinces having to stagger in that coming back of the grade 12s as well as the grade 7. So I think as you move across the various schools and the different economic, you know, when you look at the different landscapes that the country has to offer, everybody having a different experience. Some schools where they can afford, they've managed to be able to conduct those online classes rigorously and I think religiously, if you want to call it that, in terms of ensuring that they try and keep up with that syllabus. But I think the story not the same for everyone across the country. But indeed, we wait and see what happens to the class of 2020.
Mahlako, now obviously these students are writing during a global pandemic. There is a chance that some people may be affected by COVID as they're going into the exams. What do we know about what happens then?
Well, Nzinga, it was our understanding that when the Minister of Basic Education, Ms. Angie Mchecha, came, when she was signing, I think it was a pledge, an examination pledge, it was in Tembisa a few weeks ago, having said there when we spoke to the department officials, they told us that seemingly at the moment what is going to happen is that should you contract the virus and you are unable to write, and you will have to sit for those June supplementary examinations. But however, I did speak to one of, I think it was a director, they're telling us that, you know, should there perhaps be a large outbreak somewhere, they would have to make some sort of concession. But as things stand right now, it would seem that the only other option, if you are unable to write now in the November-December period, you would have to go into, you'd have to go and sit for the June supplementary examination. So seemingly not a lot of leeway for learners to breathe. I suppose up to learners to ensure that they don't contract, you know, COVID-19 during this time. But we will have to see, will the numbers rise? What is it that's going to happen? Because I haven't heard anything coming out of the department. Should we find ourselves in a situation whereby things take a turn, a certain type of turn, what is it that is going to happen to matriculants this year? But I think really these are unprecedented times for, you know, the children, actually all the learners of 2020.
Mahlako, being unprecedented times like this, do you have more of an idea of the kind of conditions that matrics are going to write under?
Well, you know, Zinga, what we do know that did come out of that Malusi briefing was the mere fact that Malusi having said that they were going to send out people to make sure that examination centers will be adhering to the COVID-19 regulations in terms of your social distancing, your sanitization, and also ensuring that, you know, you've got your mask. But also, I think what also was quite interesting to see is as a result of COVID-19 and the regulations that things have to happen under, a lot of centers, well, a lot of provinces having to increase the number of examination centers, because you'd appreciate that in a hall that would normally fit 200 children comfortably under normal circumstances, you'd probably have to halve this. So meaning you have to now go and cater for perhaps an extra 100 somewhere else, because you'd also understand that various schools have different numbers. I mean, for example, I always go back to this example. When you go to Tembisa High, they have, I think, over 400-500 matriculants that they have as a school. So I think a lot of schools would have to do different juggling acts, because just the school alone, I think, would probably take up a lot of the classes in terms of ensuring that every room meets those social distancing protocols in terms of learners having to write. But I think also another thing when it comes to the issue of the syllabus, we do know that Umalusi, as well as the department, and I also heard MEC Lisufi also saying that they are also in agreement with the call by Umalusi that the National Senior Certificate should not be watered down. It should not be changed to accommodate these COVID times, saying that we should not interfere with the integrity of the national senior certificate, that the matrics of 2020 should be seen to have to be on par with all the other previous classes. So it's going to be quite interesting to watch, especially when the results come out. We do know that last year the class of 2019, having recorded that grade pass, I think they were over 80% in terms of the pass rate. Also, it's going to be quite interesting to see what comes out of the various provinces, especially we know with KZN having the largest number in terms of grade 12 candidates. Whatever happens there in that province, considering that it is quite the rural, it's rather a large province, and it's quite rural as well. What is it that MEC Mshengu is going to have done to ensure that they're able to keep up with those good marks that they got last year? But also looking at Limpopo, I mean, we've been in Limpopo quite a lot, seeing that some kids were just unable to attend those online classes, especially also grade 12s. Will this affect them? Because I think they were the worst performing province in terms of that log that you have every year. I think it's quite interesting. We will have to see what is it that, what recipe or formula these MECs and their departments provincially will have used to try and ensure that their children are up to date. You'll also remember, Nzinga, there was also that issue of attendance in terms of learners coming back after in the second week of June. Gauteng was reporting that they couldn't account at one point for 30% of their learners. There were some learners that were just, they went through the system, some parents not comfortable with bringing their learners back in. And I think this being, while we don't necessarily have the official statistics in terms of the other provinces, but just an indication of, you are able to see now how this COVID-19 has impacted the class of 2020. We have over 1 million learners that are registered candidates that are expected to write. But I think on Thursday, when they sit down for that English paper, it's then that we'll be able to see whether we will indeed have that entire 1 million plus that will be sitting for the examinations. Will candidates be confident enough to actually go sit down and sit for this paper and the rest of the papers?
Mahlako Komane giving us an update there on those matrics set to write exams in very difficult circumstances, being asked to rise to the challenge, and the best of luck to them.